Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop and today our guest is dialing in from Perth and it's Peter Broley from Primary Sales Australia. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Anne. Lovely to see you. Lovely to be here.
And now, in conjunction with FAR, Peter and his team will be holding some machinery workshops in the South Island in the coming weeks, and they're going to be all about setting up combines for optimum harvest. So firstly, Peter, tell us a little bit about primary sales and why you're coming to New Zealand.
That's a good question, and it started from a basis of working with some grower groups in Australia, where we were helping some of the groups who basically work with farmers and operators in different regions. So we ran 7 of these in Australia, and the sessions went really well. We brought in some specialists, and it was just the start of a conversation, and that's kind of the essence here, is to start a conversation with local growers and operators about what is going to improve their productivity and profitability at the time of harvest. And that session grew from doing stuff where we now run across Australia for Grains Research Development Corporation. We now run sessions around the country, and these conversations happen where they go into local areas and we talk and start that element of understanding of what's going to make people more productive. And when I was in New Zealand, beginning of the year, I was talking to some growers there and some of the seed buyers and the dryer guys. And the more we talked, the more we realized there was stuff going on with the challenges you face with narrow, tight windows for harvest, difficulties with thrashing difficult crop. We start a conversation around what is going to improve the profitability of operators. How can we put more grain in their bin and save them time and money? But what we need to do is be able to help them learn what needs to be done. Because I can tell you right now, the guys I know are going, we've got some ideas, but we don't know whether all of them are going to work. But we're pretty damn sure there's some good operators over here in New Zealand who'll have some good ideas. But if we could get more people doing the same thing, we reckon we could improve profitability.
So you guys are coming over in the last week of November and doing 3 workshops, one in Southland and one at Chertsey, one at Timaru. What if someone signs up, and we're obviously, this podcast is about telling people that these things are happening and encouraging them to sign up for these events, which people you can do via the FAR website, and you'll be getting some information in the mail shortly. If someone comes along to one of these days, and they are just about it, they're going to run from about 9 till 3, is that right?
Yeah, that's about right. So what most people go is, why should I come and what am I going to get out of it? It's really what it's going to be about. And the way these work, these things, they harvest is set up for the colourblind. So they start from the front and they go through to the back of the machine. And why we say it's harvest is set up for the colourblind, there's some principles that are the same, no matter whether you've got a Class machine, whether you've got a New Holland machine, a John Deere, an Ideal, whatever it is, old machine, new machine, there's some similar things we need to talk about. There are idiosyncrasies with the different colours, and that's a great thing. These guys who are coming, they've got experience both as operators and running these machines and doing training. We've got people who've worked for John Deere for 10, 15 years. We've got guys who've been product managers for Case New Holland, guys who've worked setting up Lexions, both here and in North America. So we've got real experience, but it's practical experience of you're going to get in that time you're there of what are the few tricks I'm going to go away and try and do, from whether it's just working with my header front, and the different types of fronts, whether it's pickup fronts, whether it's draper belts or auger fronts, through to what do I need to do to set up my rotor areas better, all the way through to what I look at my sieve and cleaning areas. And the aim will be is you walk away from there hopefully with what's the one thing I want to try and do that's actually going to increase my productivity and my profitability. We will be focusing first thing on harvest loss. Harvest loss is where this is founded from. And that is really where we need to start from, and is really about that harvest loss.
So do you think that growers understand the losses that they are having in the field?
I think growers appreciate that they are getting losses. I think that we, from the experience we've had in doing studies for Grains Research Development Corporation and being out in the field, I think the alarm comes when people actually do a proper physical measure. A lot of us did the old things. We wave a hat, we get out the back, we kind of see, oh yeah, this is what the grains are, put our hand on the ground and go, yeah, that's not too bad. I can tell you that when you'd actually use a proper drop pan system like the Bushel Plus to do your measures and use something that is firstly both safe to do it, you can do this remotely to drop the pan and capture a sample and calculate and see what's in that pan. It's alarming. So that study we've done, been involved with Grains Research Development Corporation, was run over the last 2 years in West Australia. Roughly 400 different drops locations were done, and in those 2 years, and there was about 6 drops done at every single site, both looking at machine loss, so that's rotor and sieve, and your head of front loss. So we looked at both of those. And the alarming number that comes with that, for West Australia alone, the grain left on the ground each of those years, last year and the year before, was $320 million.
And that's a lot.
That's a significant number. So let's put that in context. So for a grower, we can see in products like barley, it's $59 a hectare. In canola, it's $68 a hectare. In pulses, it's around another $48 a hectare. And we'll know in those pulses, as some of your smaller grain crops you've got in New Zealand, we're going to see a lot of loss off the front that we can do something about. All of these things we can do. And what we need to understand as a grower and operator is I've got to balance between operational efficiency and my losses. Now, the value we have is when you measure, you can actually make those decisions. So a grower I was working with over in New Zealand, Matthew Ridge, who's from Highbank. He was doing some measurements using the Bushel Plus, and I caught up with him, and his comment was, not only have I managed to reduce my losses in what was my small grain, I also managed to increase my speed, because I'd had the confidence now that I could make changes to my machine and increase my productivity. So here's a guy who actually saved 40 hours.
Right, which is important if you've got a tight window and the cloud's coming in.
Absolutely. And it's also important when you're thinking about to run these machines is roughly $700 an hour. So to run those machines, the depreciation with it, if you've got to chase a bid to go up, it goes even further. And absolutely. I've got another good story from another New Zealand grower. He was running class machines, small grain. He saved himself $12,000 in one paddock, one field, in terms of reducing his losses. I said to Mark, so how'd you go into cereals? He said, we're fine. I know what I'm doing in the cereals. Settings were great. Knew what my losses were. I said, that's great. So you were fine. I said, yeah, it was all good. I said, okay. He said, we were a little bit faster. Oh, were you? I said, what did you do? He said, we went about an extra mile an hour faster. I said, did you, Mark? Well, what were you doing before? Oh, well, in our cereals, we do about 4 miles an hour. We did about 5. Silence. Mark, that's a 25% increase in speed. Mark turned, so I said, Mark, it's $700 an hour. I said, Pete, forget that. I said, you just reminded me, we finished 3 days early. I got a crop in. My neighbours didn't. And that is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help growers and operators here in this conversation to be able to make proactive decisions of what they're doing, because harvest, we only do it once, Anne. If we go and seed and it stuffs up and we have a bad rain event, we have a washout, we can go back if we can get the seed. With harvest, it's one shot and one shot only we've got, which is why we've got to go and get this cash operation absolutely right and maximize our opportunity of what we're doing. So hence the idea of balancing those two elements together.
Yep. So I'll just explain to people how this is going to run again with the 3 days here in Southland and the 2 in Canterbury. Chris Smith, Mighty Organiser, is going to be talking to some local growers. So there'll be farm machines coming down. They're not going to be new shiny things straight out of the showroom. People are bringing their own machines so that it's comparable. The machines that people are used to seeing and using. Some will be newer, some will be older. They will be every colour of the rainbow, so there'll be something there to suit everybody. And then once you arrive there on the day, Peter and the team are going to welcome you, and then you're going to start at the front and work your way through to the back of the machine with a whole lot of options for things that you can adjust, change to improve your harvest yield. That's correct?
Yes, absolutely. But we also want to hear the stories from what everybody has tried. So we want to know what's worked and what hasn't worked, because that's also important. Because there's things growers and operators are doing there. They're going to go, I've tried this in sunflowers and that worked really well. Great, let's share that story. We would also want to hear from the dealers. This conversation does involve the dealers. They've got a very important role to play. Growers, operators, seed suppliers, dealers, they've all got a role to play in contributing to this conversation, because those machines you've talked about, they are very much about making everybody's machine work, not just the brand spanking new ones that walk out tomorrow. It's how do I get my old machines, my old fronts working more efficiently and maximize my capital expenditure I've done to improve it.
And so most of this harvest setup and some of the little alterations that you're talking about, are they DIY things, or are they going to involve somebody from the dealership or an engineering company?
There is no silver bullet here. So there's lots of different things people can try you'll hear from cutting stuff to adding bits to bits of plastic that have tried to try and improve things. So there are all sorts of things people have done. I saw a really good homegrown session, one done on a header front to improve harvesting, to reduce losses, where someone basically tacked on a whole bunch of metal. You can do this yourself, but there are going to be solutions undoubtedly that people have tried and proven. Once someone's proven something, I guarantee you an organisation like ourselves will try and commercialise it because we know it's going to work. So we're going to try and bring some ideas and stories together. There'll be things people can walk away and try for themselves. There's things they can work into their dealerships and elsewhere. But the important thing will be is we will come back afterwards in January to then come and try some of this stuff out, actually be in the field. The specialists will be there and come and do some work with collaborative growers who want to actually go, hey, I'm putting my hand up. I want to give it a go. And the guys will come and give it a go.
Yeah, I hadn't got to that bit. So yes, once you've attended one of these workshops, that's not the end. The team from primary sales will be back at harvest time to just see whether those additions and alterations that you've made to machine, just to see what difference they are making, so that you can really have a good story to tell your neighbours. Because one thing we have learned here, and you farmers knew it all along, is that farmers love listening to other farmers. They're the people that they trust most in the world, because generally other farmers aren't trying to sell them something. So if they're endorsing something or telling you how they did it, that it works, it tends to work pretty well for people having a go themselves.
It does. But we also want to know the things that aren't working that well and why. So the story of why it hasn't worked tells us more about how that header harvester is working in those conditions, because you've got specific conditions and challenges in New Zealand, and the same in Australia. We've got some interesting and different circumstances compared to North America and parts of Europe where these machines are coming from. Because the question I'm often asked is, why these machines? Why did they come out ready out of the box? It's like, well, they don't, because they're not made specifically for Australia, New Zealand conditions. We are a very small part of the globe. We have specific conditions, and the best people who know how to change those are guys like you on the ground who are listening and have that experience of what's worked and what hasn't worked as well. And that's why we know and have tried stuff. We can bring that knowledge and learning and say, hey, we tried these things. See if that works for you in your conditions. So we know that they're set up generally over in North America for what will be corn and soybean, but we know that we got to improve it for this particular crops you're going to face in New Zealand.
And obviously the crops in New Zealand and the sorts of straw and the yield and everything else we're dealing with is going to be different to Western Australia or Victoria or New South Wales.
It is. We do have areas where we can go. There's some good learnings we have. So areas say in southeastern South Australia, where you've got a quite heavy high crop burden with big biomass and small grain crops to try and deal with. Anything like the lucerne, alfalfa type products, and also places like Tasmania, very, very similar, doing things like carrot seed and grasses. So we are working in those environments. We've got some ideas and we've tried things out that have worked, but we're not coming with a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. What we're hoping is that when you go through this, you will go for it and leave the day and go, wow, I've really learnt and heard, and I'm now talking to this other person. I've got someone else I can talk to. I'm going to go and try this and see what we have from here.
Thank you very much, Peter. We're looking forward to meeting you and the team in November. Thank you, growers, for listening. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.